Silencing the mind. It is something human beings have longed for across the centuries. We know the restless chatter within us, thoughts that race forward to the future, thoughts that cling to the past, plans, worries, regrets, dreams. Most of us live surrounded by this inner noise, rarely touching the stillness that lies beneath. And yet, throughout history, there have been a few rare beings who have lived from silence itself. Ramana Maharshi was one of them. Born in South India in 1879, he lived most of his life at the foot of Arunachala, the holy mountain. His presence drew thousands, villagers, scholars, poets, seekers from faraway lands. They found not a philosopher, not a preacher, but a man who radiated a peace beyond words. In his company, many felt the mind grow quiet, as if silence itself was speaking. Ramana did not teach through complicated doctrines. His guidance was simple, direct, rooted in his own awakening at the age of 16. He pointed people back to themselves, back to the source of thought, back to the awareness in which the mind arises. This is what we will explore together: his life, his awakening, his method of self-inquiry, and the silence that was, and still is, his greatest teaching. As you listen, I invite you not only to hear the words, but also to notice the spaces between them. For it is in silence that Ramana's true teaching is found. The human mind is restless by nature. It rarely sits still. From the moment we wake up in the morning, thoughts begin to move, planning, remembering, imagining, worrying. They pull us forward into the future, back into the past, anywhere but here. Notice how the mind is always reaching. It says, when this happens, then I will be happy. When I fix this problem, then I will be at peace. When I gain this success, then I will be fulfilled. And so, life becomes a chase. We chase possessions, hoping they will secure us. We chase recognition, hoping it will validate us. We chase pleasure, hoping it will last. But have you noticed? None of it stays. The thing we desired yesterday, once gained, soon loses its shine. The recognition we received quickly fades, and we are hungry for more. The pleasure we enjoyed is gone, and the craving begins again. It is like pouring water into a pot with a hole at the bottom. No matter how much we fill it, it never stays full. The mind's search outward never ends, because what it seeks cannot be found outside. Ramana Maharshi pointed out that this endless restlessness is the nature of the outward-turned mind. When the mind turns outward, it identifies with the body, with thoughts, with desires. It becomes the ego, the sense of I am this or I am that. And the ego is never satisfied. But there is another possibility. The mind can also turn inward. When it does, it returns to its source. And at the source, restlessness ceases. The chasing ends. What remains is silence. Silencing the mind, then, does not mean waging war against it. It does not mean forcing thoughts to stop. That would only create more struggle. Instead, it means gently tracing thoughts back to where they began. When the mind is seen for what it is, just movements within awareness, it naturally dissolves into the stillness beneath. Think of the waves on the surface of the ocean. They rise and fall endlessly, each one different, each one temporary. But beneath the waves, the ocean is vast, deep, unmoving. In the same way, thoughts are waves. Awareness is the ocean. When we identify only with the waves, life feels restless, unstable. When we rest as the ocean, silence is revealed. This is the first step in Ramana's teaching, to see clearly the restless nature of the mind, and to recognize that true peace will never be found in chasing its movements. The peace we long for is already here, but to discover it, the mind must turn inward. To understand Ramana's teaching, it helps to know his own awakening. As a boy, he was known as Venkataraman. He grew up in a small village in Tamil Nadu in South India. His father passed away when he was young, and he was raised by his mother along with his brothers. He was an ordinary child in many ways. He loved sports, especially wrestling and swimming. He had a strong, healthy body and was known among his friends for his courage. In school, he was not particularly devoted to studies. In fact, he often daydreamed or dozed off in class. Nothing about him suggested that he would one day become a great sage. But there was one unusual trait. Whenever he heard the name Arunachala, the sacred mountain, he felt a deep stirring inside. He did not know why. He only knew that the name filled him with awe and devotion. At the time, he had never seen the mountain, never even traveled there. And yet, something in him knew that Arunachala was his true home. Then came the turning point. One afternoon, when he was 16 years old, he was sitting alone in his uncle's house. Suddenly, without warning, he was overcome by an intense fear of death. This was not a vague thought, but a certainty. He felt death pressing upon him with great force. It was as though the body would stop at any moment. Most of us in that situation would panic, but instead of running from the fear, he turned to face it directly. He lay down on the floor, rigid like a corpse. He held his breath, stiffened his limbs, and imagined the body lifeless. Then he asked himself, if this body dies, what is it that dies? Am I only this body, or am I something more? As he turned his attention inward, a great discovery arose. He realized that the body may die, but the sense of I am, the awareness of being, remained untouched. He saw with absolute clarity that he was not the body, not the mind, but the deathless awareness that knows both. In that moment, fear dissolved completely. Death was no longer real to him. The self, pure awareness, revealed itself as eternal, unchanging, beyond birth and death. From that day on, his life was transformed. Ordinary interests faded away. The things that had once seemed important lost their meaning. He became absorbed in the inner self, resting in a silence that was unshakable. Soon after, he left home quietly, without telling his family. He felt called by Arunachala, the sacred mountain whose name had always stirred his heart. He took a train, then walked, until he finally arrived at the foot of the hill. There, he gave himself completely to silence. For years, he lived in deep absorption, often in caves, sometimes in temple halls. He was so lost in the self that he neglected the body. At times, people had to feed him or care for him because he would forget to eat. Insects bit him, children sometimes threw stones at him, but he remained unmoved, lost in the bliss of pure awareness. Gradually, word of the young sage spread. Devotees began to gather around him. They felt a peace in his presence that words could not describe. Slowly, an ashram formed at the base of Arunachala, though he himself never sought followers or fame. To the end of his life, he remained the same, simple, silent, untouched by praise or criticism, living in the awareness he had discovered as a boy of 16. His awakening was not something he read in a book, nor something taught by another teacher. It arose directly from within, and it never left him. When people asked him for guidance, Ramana offered no complex practices. He did not prescribe rituals, long mantras, or difficult disciplines. He did not say you must retreat to a cave, give up your family, or renounce the world. Instead, he pointed to one simple and direct path: self-inquiry. The essence of the practice can be expressed in a single question: who am I? At first, this may sound too simple, even puzzling. How can just asking "who am I" silence the mind? But Ramana explained that this question, if asked with sincerity, is not meant to be answered intellectually. It is a way of turning attention inward, away from the play of thoughts and toward the one who experiences them. Here is how it works. When a thought arises, whether it is fear, desire, memory, or imagination, pause and notice it. Instead of following the thought outward into its story, ask, "To whom has this thought come?" The answer will be clear: to me. Then ask further, "Who am I?" This simple turning of attention reveals something powerful. The thought that once seemed so real and urgent begins to dissolve when its root is examined. By tracing it back to the sense of I, its energy weakens. Ramana explained that all thoughts rise from a single source, the I thought. Just as branches grow from the trunk of a tree, every thought grows from the basic assumption, I am the body, I am the mind, I am this person. If the root of the tree is cut, the branches wither. In the same way, if the I thought is traced back to its origin, it dissolves, and the mind becomes still. Self-inquiry is not about repeating the words, "Who am I?" like a mantra. It is not a mental game. It is a genuine investigation, a turning back toward the source of awareness. Suppose anger arises. Normally, the mind would run outward, blaming someone, replaying the situation, fueling more anger. But in self-inquiry, you pause and ask, "To whom has this anger come?" The answer, "To me." Then you ask, "Who am I?" And instead of being carried away by anger, attention returns inward to the silent awareness beneath it. Or imagine worry about the future arises. Instead of spinning in fear, you ask, "To whom has this worry come?" The answer is the same: to me. Then, who am I? Again, the mind is brought back to its source. In this way, self-inquiry does not fight thoughts, nor does it try to suppress them. It allows them to arise, but instead of following them outward, it brings them back to their root, where they dissolve. Over time, the practice becomes natural. At first, the mind may resist. Thoughts may come in rapid waves. But with persistence, the habit of turning inward grows stronger. Slowly, the grip of thoughts weakens. The space of silence becomes more familiar. Ramana often compared the mind to a thief entering a house. If you chase after the thief into the dark, you may never catch him. But if you stay at the door, watching carefully, the thief cannot escape. In the same way, if you run after every thought, you are carried away endlessly. But if you stay at the source, the sense of I, thoughts lose their power. He also explained that self-inquiry is like tracing a river back to its source. The river may appear wide and forceful as it flows outward, but if you follow it upstream, it narrows and eventually disappears into the spring from which it came. Thoughts are like the river. The self is the spring. By tracing thoughts back, you discover the origin, and in that discovery, the river of thought disappears into silence. This is the essence of the path, not suppressing, not controlling, but gently, persistently returning to the root. And at the root, the silence of the self shines by itself. Although Ramana answered questions, he often said that his highest teaching was not given in words, it was given in silence. People traveled from faraway countries, sometimes across oceans, just to sit near him. They expected discourses, long instructions, maybe even secret techniques. But when they arrived, they often found him sitting quietly, gazing softly, perhaps answering a question here or there, but mostly resting in silence. At first, some visitors were puzzled. How could a teacher remain so quiet? But after a while, something began to happen. Their restless thoughts slowed. The constant mental noise softened. In that atmosphere, words were not necessary. The silence itself was communicating something far deeper than explanations could reach. One devotee once remarked, "When I came here, I had countless questions, but in his presence they dissolved one by one. I realized that all my seeking was only a distraction. What I truly wanted was already here, in the quiet of my own heart." Silence in Ramana's presence was not emptiness. It was alive, vibrant, overflowing with peace. It was as though the mountain itself, Arunachala, radiated through him, a stillness so vast that no thought could disturb it. He often pointed out that words belong to the mind, and the mind can only go so far. But silence is beyond the mind. Silence reveals the self directly, without the need for concepts. This is why he would say that silence is the highest teaching. Words may point to truth, but silence is truth itself. For us, too, silence can become the teacher. Even as you listen now, notice the silence beneath my words. Notice the stillness in which each sound arises. Notice the quiet between one thought and the next. That silence is not far away. It is not something to be created. It is already here, always present, waiting to be recognized. When the mind is restless, we imagine silence is something difficult, rare, only for saints. But the truth is simpler. Silence is our natural state. Thoughts come and go, but silence is the background that never leaves. Ramana lived in that recognition fully. He didn't need to say much, because his very being radiated what words could not describe. And those who sat with him learned, not through instruction, but through presence. In the end, silence is not just the absence of words. It is the presence of being. It is peace. It is freedom. It is who we are. How can we bring this into daily life? Ramana reminded seekers again and again that self-inquiry does not require renunciation or retreat into a forest. It does not demand that we abandon family, career, or ordinary responsibilities. It can be practiced anywhere, in any circumstance, because the self is not elsewhere, it is always here. The practice begins simply. When a thought arises, do not get lost in it. Instead, ask, to whom has this thought come? If you feel anger rising, pause and inquire, to whom has this anger come? The answer will be, to me. Then turn further inward. Who am I? If worry grips you in the middle of the night, ask, to whom has this worry come? Again, the answer, to me. Then inquire, who am I? If joy arises, if excitement arises, if fear or sadness arises, trace each one back the same way. Do not follow the thought outward. Do not try to suppress it. Simply turn inward and see where it comes from. At first, it may seem like the mind resists. The thoughts may come quickly, one after another. But each time you return to inquiry, the power of the thought weakens. Slowly, gradually, the attention begins to rest more naturally in the source. Ramana explained that self-inquiry is like cutting a tree at the root. Most practices only trim the branches. They calm the surface of the mind for a time, but the root, the I thought, remains. With self-inquiry, we do not fight each branch of thought individually. We go straight to the root and ask, who is the one to whom all these thoughts arise? In daily life, you can do this silently, even in the midst of activity. Walking, working, speaking, whenever a thought or emotion arises, gently turn inward. Over time, it becomes less of a practice and more of a natural habit. The attention begins to rest in the self without effort. Ramana often reassured seekers who said they were too busy with family or work. He told them, "You need not abandon your duties. Perform them, but inwardly keep tracing the I back to its source. The outer life may continue, but inwardly you remain free, anchored in silence." Many people believe that peace will come only after changing circumstances, moving to a quieter place, living alone, escaping from responsibilities. But Ramana showed that true silence does not depend on conditions. Even in the noise of the world, the self is unshaken. This is why he called self-inquiry the most direct path. Other methods may calm the mind for a while, but self-inquiry goes straight to the heart. It does not create peace, it reveals that peace is already here. If you try this earnestly, you may notice small shifts. The thoughts that once carried you away lose their grip. The emotions that once felt overwhelming begin to fade more quickly. The space of silence becomes more familiar. And gradually, you see that this silence is not something you create through effort. It is your very nature. The inquiry only removes the veil of identification with thoughts. In this way, silencing the mind is not about fighting with yourself. It is about relaxing into what you already are. Ramana Maharshi lived as a shining example of what it means to dwell in silence. He did not withdraw from the world completely. He lived in the ashram, surrounded by people, animals, and daily tasks. His silence was not an escape from life, but a way of being in the world without being caught by it. He took part in simple work. He cooked in the kitchen, cut vegetables with the devotees, and cared for the animals that gathered around the ashram. Cows, dogs, monkeys, even peacocks found shelter there. People noticed how animals that were restless or fearful would become calm in his presence. His silence embraced not only human beings but all creatures. Visitors remembered seeing him feeding the cow Lakshmi with tender care, or protecting a squirrel that had made its home near him. In every gesture there was peace and compassion. His silence was not passive. It was active love, expressed through the smallest details of life. For the devotees, just watching him live was a lesson. He did not give long speeches about detachment, but he showed it by the way he lived, without pride, without anxiety, without complaint. He accepted whatever came, whether praise or blame, health or illness, ease or difficulty. His equanimity was unshaken. This is what it means to live in silence. Not the absence of sound, not isolation from the world, but resting in the awareness that is untouched by circumstances. It means to act without being bound by action, to love without clinging, to serve without pride. For us, too, silence can be lived in the midst of daily life. You may be at work, surrounded by noise and responsibility. You may be with family, tending to children or elders. You may be in joy or in sorrow, and yet, inwardly, you can rest in the same silence that Ramana embodied. It is not about what you do, but about where you rest your attention. When the mind begins to wander outward, return it inward. When emotions rise, notice them and gently trace them back to the self. In this way, the silence at the heart of your being begins to shine through every action. To live with a silent mind is not to withdraw from life, but to be fully present within it, anchored in peace. It is to live lightly without being weighed down by endless stories of the mind. It is to discover freedom in the very midst of the world. This was Ramana's life. Simple, compassionate, steady. A life lived entirely in the silence of the self, yet open and accessible to all. And this same possibility exists for each one of us. To silence the mind is to return to what you truly are, not the body which changes with time, not the stream of thoughts which come and go, not the shifting roles you play in life, parent, worker, student, friend. All of these appear and disappear, but you remain. You are the awareness in which the body, the thoughts, and the roles arise. You are the stillness that witnesses them all. When thoughts come, do not be afraid. Do not try to fight them. Simply trace them back. To whom has this thought come? To me. Who am I? In that simple question, the mind turns back to its origin. The thought dissolves, and what remains is silence. This silence is not new. It is not created. It is not something to be gained in the future. It has always been here, quietly waiting beneath the surface noise of the mind. It is your very nature. Ramana Maharshi's life was a living reminder of this truth. His words, his actions, even his silence, all pointed back to the same discovery, the self, pure awareness, shining in the heart of all beings. And now, as this reflection comes to an end, I invite you to turn inward, just for a moment. Let go of the need to understand. Let go of the effort to achieve. Allow yourself simply to be. Rest as you are, not as the thinker, not as the doer, not as the seeker, but as the awareness in which seeking, doing, and thinking all arise. Feel the simplicity of this, the naturalness of this. There is nothing more to find, nothing more to reach. Silence is here. And as you rest in that silence, notice how everything is included. Sounds may arise, thoughts may arise, sensations may arise. But beneath it all, silence remains unshaken. This is the silence Ramana lived in. This is the silence he pointed to. And this is the silence that you are. Carry this recognition into your daily life. In moments of struggle, return inward. In moments of joy, return inward. Whatever the circumstance, the silence of the self is always present, waiting to be noticed. As we close, let us sit together, quietly, for just 1 minute. No effort, no striving, simply being. And in this silence, the teaching is complete.